Hey everybody, hope you're having a great weekend. I'm just getting some things set up and I felt like doing some more live streaming today and adding some more features to this audio player. I've been thinking about it a lot, and so I thought, why not get on here and do a little bit of live streaming and show what ideas that I've got. Uh, so, um, so here I am. I don't know where this is going to go just yet, but I hope it goes somewhere. Um, so one thing that I've been thinking about is adding some basic features to this audio player that we were working on earlier this week, and um, just maybe some basic stuff like gain. Also, a lot of DJ apps have things like how far through the track you're playing, and what else? Um, so gain, we have start and stop already. We could also add some some more option. We can also make our player a little bit more flexible. So at the moment we have it where it's only loading a predetermined song from a predetermined location. So we could probably make that more flexible. Some other things that have been on my mind have been a basic three band EQ, a um, what else? Three band EQ. I want to eventually add pitch, backwards playing. I want to do an internal mixer so you could have two audio sources that are going into a mixing source and then be able to control the gains of each one of those. Of course, we're going to eventually want to have some type of playlist that you're able to select from, and maybe you're able to take and drag and drop a song onto a track. So we would need some drag and drop functionality. Those are just a few of the things that I've been thinking about. So if you're tuning in and spending your Sunday with us, thank you very much. And um, and by the way, this is an open source repository. There is a link to the repository in the video description. And also, what I've been working to do is abstract some of the code snippets out to the audio programmer wiki page. So just trying to generalize some of the code snippets, and hopefully some of those can be helpful for people as well. So um, so yeah, so those are some of the things that I've been thinking about. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and um, and we're going to just pull up this project. Like I said before, oh, so it looks like JUCE has been updated, so we could do that right now. So uh, so yeah, so let me show you how to do that right now, just in case you're not aware. So if you get, so I like to actually use uh, Git to actually pull the latest JUCE code from the JUCE repository, and JUCE also makes it very convenient if you're not very familiar with Git, where you can actually just download JUCE as a just as a package if that's the way that you want to do it and you're not very familiar with Git. But I personally like to use Git. If you're going to be a developer, I would highly encourage you to try to get familiar with at least the basics of it. So I will show you how to do that now. So in this scenario, if I can get my keyboard into the right place, so we're going to do CD, which means change directory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change directory to my applications folder. So one cool thing that you can do with command line here is you can actually drag and drop. Oh, I thought you could drag and drop that. Now I've just ruined my shortcut. So let's go back here. So if I go ls-a, this will list all the what's in my current directory. So here we want to go into applications. If it's, yeah, so we see that we have applications as something that's listed in our current directory. See it right here. So we want to CD into that. So I could do CD AP, and then if I hit tab, you can also, there's also an autocomplete feature there. So we're going to CD into applications, and then if I do ls-a to list everything that's in there, then I was expecting it to give me a whole bunch of applications. So let me see if it does this. So I'm going to try to do this. It's weird. I thought that it was going to list all of my applications. Why is it not doing that? CD. Why is it doing this? So I'm in applications. Let me just do this. CD. Then I'm going to just try to drag and drop this. CD. And then I wanted to go into JUCE. So if I do, there we go. If I CD into, let me just try this again. There we go. I just did ls again, and now it's doing it okay. I don't know why it wasn't doing it before. Anyway, if we do CD into JUCE, now I can do, if I do git branch, it'll tell you what branch I'm on. So I'm on the develop branch. So this is where you're getting the latest changes that are being made by the JUCE team before they put out new kind of stable versions. Now what I can do is I can pull down the latest changes by doing git pull. And now I've done that. Now one of the only things about this is that I need to rebuild the producer now. So if I'm going to need to quit out of this. Now, if I go into the JUCE folder here, so now I'm in my Finder, I go into the JUCE folder, go into Extras. There's this folder here called Producer. It's a little bit misleading because if you try to build it, if you try to build the Producer using the Producer, that's not what you want to do. So it's a little bit misleading in the way that you have to go into builds and then into your operating system. So mine in this case is Mac OS X. And then there's actually a Xcode project here. I'm just going to double click on that. Just wait for Xcode to wake up and do its thing. So it's waking up. So here we are in the Xcode project. So this is actually the Producer application itself. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build this because what I've done is I've just downloaded or pulled the latest changes from JUCE's GitHub repository. So developers have been working on JUCE. They've been making changes, and now because of that, I've pulled down the changes, and now what I need to do is I need to rebuild the producer so that it actually is in line with the rest of the with the latest version of JUCE that I'm intending to use. So it's currently building. And by the way, I've put a gate on my mic now, so it should be a lot quieter. You shouldn't be hearing any like noise floor or background static or anything. But if the gate is a little bit too tight to my voice and it's cutting out my voice, please let me know so I can just adjust it. So it's just building right now. We see that it's building over here in the right, and we're just loading, building, and while it's doing that, also just to let you know about our audio programmer Discord, if you're not there already, we have nearly 9,000 members now in our Discord. So it's a great place to learn more about audio programming, and also if you're a more experienced developer, also to contribute to the community, help other developers come along and learn new skills as well. So I personally find that very rewarding, and I hope you do too. I'm not sure why it's doing this. Platform is not currently connected. Weird. Okay, let me just try building that right now. So, okay, we got build succeeded. So I think that's fine. All right, let me just close out of this. And now, okay, the producer is opening and waking up. Cool, so now we got this JUCE DJ app here. And I'm just going to go into here. And we see that we don't have that new version of JUCE is available notification anymore. So that's gone now. So it's showing that we're using the latest version of JUCE. Now if we just build this, just make sure that everything actually works and is designed properly, then we should be fine. So our goal today is just to try to add some basic features to this audio player that we've created. Some things that I'm thinking are items like setting and finding the gain if we haven't done that yet. And what else? Setting, finding the gain, listing the song that's loaded, or if no song is loaded, then saying no song. Finding out how far through a track that we already are. Things like that. We're not going to worry about any types of visualization or anything like that just yet, because that's going to take a little bit more thought. But as you can see, we have this these three buttons that I've just put kind of randomly on this page. I'm going to hit load. Now if I hit play, the song should play. There we go. And if I hit stop, then the song stops. If I hit play, it'll play from the point where I last stopped it. And there we go. And I hit stop again and it stops. So that is that's working fine. So one thing that, if you've been following along in our audio programmer Discord, we've been that we've been talking about has been this idea of state, what people call in development state, and one of the things that, and I'm going to maybe table that discussion for a little bit later, because a friend of ours in the community named Normalized has actually been giving this a lot of thought about application state and things like that, and he actually has an open source repository where he's actually been writing some code for some ideas, and he suggested that we do a live stream where we talk about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not try to mess around with state, the subject of state today, because I want to save that for the live stream and let Martin, aka Normalized, give his thoughts on that. But essentially, it was this idea of, and this is something that I've been learning about a lot as well. Apparently, this is kind of developer 101, and maybe some of the web developers that are in the audience would know more about this than I would. But basically, you have this data. So we have this audio player, and in this audio player, I have this data, this class that's kind of data. Like this is all of the things that I would expect an audio player to do. So stuff like loading a file, processing the audio. There, you know, I would probably want to add methods like something like gain or play, stop, reset, finding out the song name, things that you would normally expect in a DJ style audio player. I mean, we could even take a look here if we open a new tab and I say something like, "Sir," if we look at a typical application like Serato, right? So if I go in here, I want to just see the image. I don't want to, okay, maybe if I go, I just want to see the image, dang it. Okay, so something like this, right? This one is, of course, has had over 15 years of development, right? So it has a load of features. This one in particular has source separation, source isolation, has different audio effects on it, things like that. But we can see some basic things, right? Like the song name, song artist, what audio player we're on, what the tempo of it is, what the song, what would you call it? The length of the song is, the BPM. You also have this. You have different options like ejecting the song. You have a level meter here. You have a pan. You have a pitch. Yeah. So these are some of the things, and you see here that you have like this play button. And so these are some of the things that I'm thinking of adding to our audio player class, right? So maybe we could start off with something as simple as what the name of the track is. And we don't want to go too far into like designing what this is going to look like, but maybe it's something that we could just start off with in a very basic way and just use this as a model. And there are other open source DJ applications and things like that, but the purpose of this and the purpose of this live stream and the reason I'm doing this is to try as much as I can to think through these problems myself. And to be transparent, I actually have a whole other mostly complete DJ application that's more in it's more of a DJ game. It's a DJ scratching game where a lot of these problems have already been solved, some by myself, some by other developers that have helped me. And what I'm doing is I've started this from the beginning again to just serve as a place where we could all learn together, all think through these problems again, and just consider them. and try to work through them without too much outside help. And so I'm trying to challenge myself as much as possible. So with that being said, let's get started. I think I've done enough talking. So first thing that I see here is that we have this set gain um, here. So if we go into our audio player class, we have this apply gain here. Um, Now, one thing that I'm thinking is that we want to, so you have raw gain, which is normally a value between 0 and 1. So to go back to some very basic digital signal processing principles, you have this waveform. So a waveform like what I had up before. So let me go back to that again. Maybe I'll keep that up a little bit. So let's go back to where we were, just so we can reference this a little bit. All right, so here we go. So everybody has seen a waveform, right? So this, if we look at this waveform where my mouse is, these are values that are going between, or should be going between, +1 and -1, and many times they're supposed to be in between that range. Now we have raw gain, we have something called raw gain, which is that if we take each one of these values and we can multiply it by a value between 0 and 1. So if we multiplied each one of these values by 0, then multiplication says that the result would be 0, which would mean that you would hear silence, right? So silence. So that what would happen is that if you took every one of those values that were in this wave and you multiplied it by 0, something times 0 equals 0, which means you hear silence. If you multiply it by 1, then you hear the same input and output. If you multiply it by more than 1, then it will raise the volume. If you multiply it by 0.5, then it will take each value and it will chop it in half. So that seems pretty straightforward. Now, one of the wrinkle in this is that the way that our ears hear these values as humans is not 0 to 1. So we do not hear gain linearly. We hear it what they call logarithmically, which means that so what that means is that when something is at a low volume, that if you're comparing two sounds that are at a fairly low volume, but let's say they have, I don't know, very little difference in them. If it's two clapping sounds and you do one very quiet, and then you increase that by, let's say, point 0.3, the gain of that by 0.3, you would hear the difference in that a lot more than if you were comparing two clap sounds that were very loud but at the same distance of gain apart. Does that make sense? So because of that, the reason what we need to do or what many DSP engineers, audio software developers do to account for that is they take this gain and they put it on what's called a logarithmic scale, which means that it's more in line with what we would expect to hear as humans. And I say that because that's what I would like to do first with set gain. Is currently what we have is we have this when we pull in a new gain, it's actually taking and it's applying it by um, to a buffer size amount of samples. So what it's doing is if our buffer size is 512 samples at a time that it's processing at a time, it will take and it will apply this gain to 512 samples at one particular point in time. Um, what I would like for it to do is to do this by each sample rather than by a buffer amount of samples. I think that's what I would like to do. But another thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to change this this gain to um, a logarithmic value rather than um, rather than just to raw gain. Okay. And the reason that I'm going to do that is I'm going to show you another thing. I know I'm bouncing around a little bit and doing a lot of talking and not a lot of coding, but I think that this will be helpful for people. Hopefully I have Ableton Live installed on this computer. Yes, I do. So Ableton is my favorite DAW, by the way. Okay, so here we go. So we're in Ableton right now. And what you're going to see is, as I said before, just to show you what I was talking about before in terms of how audio applications display um, gain values to the user. We can see that here on this slider in Ableton, it's not presented as a value between 0 and 1. It starts at the top with 0, and then it goes minus 12, minus 24, minus 36. So this is presented in that logarithmic type of fashion and in decibels rather than in raw gain. So you have this conversion that that you're always converting back and forth with in between what is raw gain and what is decibels full scale dBFS. So so what we're going to do to make it simple is we will create a slider that goes between minus 60 and maybe we'll make it between minus 60 and 0 for now, just to make it simple. And we will show you how that's going to affect um, how we're going to convert that back and forth between um, dBFS and what the raw gain is. And then we're going to think about whether we want this set gain function to be in raw gain, or do we want it to be in decibels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my UI here, and I'm going to create a slider. So once again, we're not paying attention too much to the UI at the moment. We're just putting some UI elements on the screen just to try to get some basics up, and then later on we'll jumble this around, we'll make it look nice and everything, but we're just trying to get the very basics going. So we have the JUCE slider class. So if I go JUCE slider, and we will call this gain slider. And what we could do is we can open another tab here, and we could go to the JUCE class list. So this is like a list of, think of these as a set of libraries that are at your disposal if you're using JUCE. So if we go to the slider class, let's see if I can, so this will be in GUI. So we have slider, and here we go. So now we want to do is we want to look at, I like this, so you have a couple different ways that you can create a slider. You can do one where you just pass on a component name. I like this one. This one is nice because you can tell it right away what type of slider style that you want. So go to the slider style class. I have numerous tutorials on how to use sliders on the channel. If you want to check those out, then you can see how to create sliders and a little bit more about those in detail. So in this case, I'm going to do a linear vertical slider. So we're just going to create that here. So since I can construct one right out of the box just with a slider style and a text entry box position, I'm going to do that. So we got this slider style, which is an enum in the slider class. So the way that we do this is we say JUCE slider style, and then we're going to go with linear vertical. And then now we just need to look at our text entry box position. So once again, this same sort of thing. We can see that this is a enum, an enumeration within the slider class. In this one, I will do for now, I will just do a text box below. So it just puts a text box below that lets us know what the value is at a current time. Okay, so once again, JUCE slider text box. Oh yeah, you can go to just text box below like that. And now we have a gain slider. So now let's just look at getting this gain slider on the screen, right? So we can say gain slider. It's actually add and make visible gain slider. Okay. Now we just need to give it just an arbitrary position. So we could say gain slider, set bounds. Now let's see. So if we started at 10 pixels, so there are a couple. Yeah. So I'll come back to what I was going to say in a second. But if we started at 10, our width is 100, then our button is going to end at 110. So we could just make this, let's just make this 120. The Y, let's see, if we're starting at the top left, let's just set it at 200. And width, let's just say 50. And height, let's say 100, right? Actually, let me just riff on that a little bit. So if this starts at 200 and then it ends at 320, let's make it 120 so we can make it roughly the same height as these three buttons. And like I said, we'll change this around, just trying to make it look halfway decent. So here we go. we're just going to build this and see if we actually get a slider up on our screen here. So we're building, building, building. All right, build succeeded. Okay, so that's fine. One thing that I just noticed was that when I calculated 320, but I didn't calculate where the stop button would end, which would be another 50 pixels down. So if I make this 170 rather than 120. Also, I'm just going to add a few little things here. So go gain slider, set range. We're going to set the range of the slider. So once again, we want this to be at going from minus 60 to 0. So we will go minus 60, and since it's a double, we're going to make sure it has that 0.0. Make sure there's no implicit conversions converting it from a double to an int. So we always want to try to keep this in mind as C++. That's a very common place that C++ can trip you up. And I was going to say 0 as the max, but let's make it like 3.0, so 3 decibels as the max. There's a little secret here that I always talk about. In that set range actually has an optional third argument, which is where you can actually set how much you want the slider to increment or decrement by. And I will show you what I mean here in just a moment. So I haven't added that third argument just yet because I want to show you what it looks like just as it is. So we're just waiting for this to build. Build succeeded. And here we go. So now we see that we have a slider that's roughly in line with our buttons. And we can see that we have that in our amount down here, we have 0.000 ... So a very common question that people ask is, well, how can I just get it to show like 0.01, for instance? And the way that you do that is you just go in here and you have this, like I said before, you have this, it worked now. So we see here that in the slider set range, you have, if I go into, this is in this. So set range, we have this optional third argument where it's new int. INT does not stand for int, it stands for interval, which means that we can actually set the interval of what this increments or decrements by. And in this situation, I will make it 0.01. And then if I compile again, what we should see is that our slider should only show 2 decimal values now, which is quite nice. So we're just waiting for this to compile. Okay. And now we see that it's a much nicer and neater decimal value of 0.01. So there we go. So that's fine, right? As I mentioned before, there was this discussion that we had in the audio programmer Discord about the idea of state, which is that which is that currently I have this data class. Like I said, it's just this class um, that does all of the things that we would expect a audio player to do, to load a file, to process audio, to set the gain. Um, so the way that I've been handling this is that I just have this um, UI that this user interface collection of sliders and so on that sit right on top of the data class and just pass the data directly to this data class. The problem is that um, you have this issue of what you would call state, which is that um, you have to be able to you have this question that comes from the outside of, okay, the user has just taken an action. Let's say that they're trying to stop the audio player. Um, and so this question of state starts coming into play, which is this external thing of like, well, what is currently happening with the audio player and what action should the audio player take when the user or when the I've been trying to get out of the habit of saying user. Let's say customer. Uh, when the customer says, um, "I want to stop. I want to stop playing the audio." Well, you have to be able to tell whether the audio is currently playing or if it's already stopped, right? So then the question becomes, where should this state, uh, this representation of state live? Where should it exist at? Currently, I have it um, in where have I put it actually? Have I put it in the data? Yes. So currently I have it in the data, right? But there have been people that have been saying that people a lot more experienced than myself that say that the the audio player should not know about its state. That should be somewhere. That should exist somewhere else. Now, that's fine, except the only thing is if I have 10 audio players, then I have 10 audio player states. Now, where should that reside at? And people have been saying that there should be a type of intermediary layer that is in between the user interface that that the customer is using, changing settings, things like that, and the data, the raw data that exists underneath. That there should be an intermediary layer that somehow sits in between these two places and is aware of what the customer is actually doing um, and um, and then informs the audio player about what the audio player is supposed to do. So this is something that I'm just learning about, and like I said, I'm going to hold off on having that discussion until I actually get normalized into a live stream so we can discuss it, because he has actually made about 6 different approaches to how to handle this, and I want to save all the fireworks for when we're on the live stream and listen to his approaches. But so for now, I'm just going to route the user interface directly into the data, and I'm just going to connect those two things directly, and um, and just connect them directly like that. So in this situation, we have this gain slider that I've created, And then the question becomes, what do we want the gain slider to do? And in this case, I want the gain slider to control the set gain underneath. Okay. So, and the way that I've connected those, which is also another questionable thing that I'm not very excited about. Maybe I need to have another, my hunch is that maybe I need to have a wrapper class that just automatically packages these two things, a data and a UI, into one place rather than having this in my main class. That doesn't quite feel right to me. Um, and so what I want is I want the gain slider controlling set gain underneath it. So here we go. So what I could do is I could use this gain slider. What would it be on value change? So we got this on value change. So the button has a lambda function available where you could do on click, where you actually set what you want to happen when the button is clicked. And gain slider has something similar called on value change. So here I'm going to do a lambda, and so what I want to happen here is that we're going to say audio player data, set gain, and then now we're running into this question of how do we want this data to be represented? Because we have this gain slider that's going from -60 to 3, so this is in decibel full scale, whereas the set gain is in raw gain. So this is expecting a value between 0 and 1. So there are several ways that we could handle this. So the first of which is that maybe you have something. So maybe we do a conversion right here where we say. So the nice thing is that JUCE actually has a handy utility class that allows you to convert raw gain to decibel full scale or vice versa. And so you can do, it's called the decibels class, and I'll show you what that is right here. So we could do it here. So we could say auto decibel value equals, and then we can just call this JUCE decibels class anywhere. So this is a static method. We could do decibels to gain. So this takes and converts the decibel value to the gain value, to the raw gain value. And in here, we want to get the value of whatever the slider is at a given time, right? Get value. And then here and then we would just pass in decibel value. Well, now that doesn't, now we should probably change our method here. So actually this is, I'm sorry, I've gotten this wrong. This should be gain value, not decibel value. So I know some of you were probably looking at this a little bit confused. So the set range, I've got this in decibel value between -60 and 3 decibels, what we're doing is we're taking and we're converting that decibels to raw gain, creating a new variable called gain value, and now I'm passing that in like that. Okay. So the point being here that we need to do this change between decibels and raw gain somewhere. So that's option one. We could do it that way. Something about this doesn't quite feel right to me because what so my thinking on this is that um, we have some sort of data conversion that's happening the in the user interface class. It's happening on the slider. I don't I don't really like that. I think that the data conversion, if we're going to have a class that's just responsible for doing conversions, that we should probably um, that I would rather have that represented within the data class rather than on um, a a visual element. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the data class around. So here we have set gain, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just modify the name of that. I'm going to say set decibel value, and here I'll change this to float new um, and I'll just call this, maybe I'll just call this value. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I think that I would like, rather than changing, so I'm just debating on what I want to do here. If I want to do this on a buffer basis or on a value basis. For now, I'll leave it on a buffer basis. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same conversion here. So I'm going to take this conversion and I'm going to bring it into this class. And now I'm converting this to gain value. Or I could call this raw gain. Raw gain feels like a more descriptive. And you could also, if you wanted to, you could actually just take this, if you wanted, and you could actually put that there. Uh, you could just put this function here. I personally think it's a little bit more readable if to have it like this. This looks a little bit more readable to me. So as we can see, we now have changed the name of this function. And so I need to change this in the header. So I'm going to go back to my header now. And just need to update what that is called, set decibel value. I mean, that could present us with different, what we need to do is we just need to keep that in mind when anytime we're calling set decibel value. But I think that's fine. So So now we just need to update what this function is called, set decibel value. Float value is gain slider get value. And maybe I'll set myself a comment here, something like, I mean, there are a couple different things here. You know, if I was creating a bunch of sliders, then maybe I want to make these values something that I can that's a little bit more global, like where I would say something like, so let's say I had a number of different UI elements that I wanted to display this range between -60 and 3.0, then then I might want to take that -60 and that 3 and put those into some type of more vision into a separate header into an area where I want to say, okay, anytime I do a slider like this, I want this to be between -60 and 3, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. I'm just going to leave myself a note that says something like values set in dB. I always forget which letters to lowercase and which ones to capitalize. I think it's DBFS. Let's just check for convention here. DBFS. Oh, not Databricks file system. Oh, so everything is capital except for the D. So let's just do that. Great. So now I feel like I think we're good there. That makes me feel better because now all of the math and conversions are being done in this audio player data class. So this is where the data is being handled rather than having it in the slider, having some sort of conversion logic in a slider or in a visual element doesn't quite feel right to me. So here we go. And okay, if we do that, now what I'm going to do is we had a, let's see, did I get rid of that? I had a thing where I was turning down the volume intentionally to make sure that we were always within our limit, but it looks like maybe I've got rid of that. Those are the types of things that will trip you up as well. If you have some sort of really quick and dirty function that changes the gain and then you forget to get rid of it at a later point, then that can trip you up. So but it looks like it's here. It looks like it's fine. Okay, so let's think about this for a second because yeah, this should be fine. So another piece of advice that I could give you is to be extremely, extremely careful when it comes to when you have something that's doing some type of that's changing your audio in some type of way, whether it's like a filter, whether it's changing the volume, something like that, you always want to make sure uh, that you try something at a very low volume before you just blast it full uh, with full blast in your headset. Like I'm wearing headphones right now, but what I'm going to do is when I get ready to play this audio, I'm going to uh, I'm going to actually take my headphones off just in case, because when if you play the audio and you've calculated your values wrong, then then it will sound horrible and it'll sound very loud, very distorted, and it could harm your ears. And I don't want that to happen to myself, and I definitely don't want that to happen to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my headphones off. As I do this, I advise you to do the same, and we're going to try this. We're going to try this out. We're going to load this and play it. Make sure that you turn your audio down, and let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm just going to load the song here. I'm going to turn the audio all the way down, and we shouldn't hear anything. So I'm going to hit play. Not hearing anything. Interestingly, I'm not actually hearing. Okay, so you hear that? That's not what was supposed to happen there. So um that's not what was supposed to happen. So let's see what went wrong. So we're going to close out of that. And let's just go and let's console out our the values that are coming out of here. So for some reason I've got this this thing that keeps on consoling out. I'm not sure why that's happening. I think that's something that maybe I need to fix. So one thing that I have currently happening is that this is all running in Rosetta because I'm using an app that has a library that only compiles in 8664. It doesn't compile in M1, which is the type of laptop that I have now. So I'm just going to exit out of Xcode for a moment. Exit out of here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my applications, into Xcode. I think it's under, where is it? Get info. And then in here, has open using Rosetta. So I don't know if this is for sure, but I'm going to uncheck this and see if that gets rid of the weird thing that's happening in my console. So I'm going to just open this up now, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now we're going to compile. I'm not going to play it, so don't worry about any problems there. So we're just compiling. Let's see if we get that strange consoling out that was happening before. I mean, that's my suspicion. Oh no, it's still happening. Okay, interesting. So let's see, let's use the good power of Google to see if that will help. So it looks like there's something that's happening here. So let's see here. Sudden error constantly. Okay. So it looks like it's, I found that in my case, it happens when I use a build scheme for a universal app to run under Rosetta. So it does seem to have to do with me building the app. So I got rid of doing, I got rid of opening the app in Rosetta. Let me just go back, make sure that it's indeed not doing that. So let's go back to Xcode. I'm going to Command I. So it's not opening using Rosetta. So, okay, so that's fine. I've exited out of Xcode. I'm going to open up the producer again. Let's look at our Mac settings here. So we got i386, ARM64. Okay, so it looks like, all right, so now we're going to open up Xcode again, see if this fixes things. Maybe I needed to exit out of JUCE as well. Okay, we're going to try to build this. Let's see if this works. Okay. Oh no, it says my Mac. Interestingly here, oh, why does it do that? Okay. See how this says my Mac Rosetta? Okay, I'm going to change this to my Mac. And now I'm going to exit out of this, stop tasks, open again. Okay, now this should stop. Okay, it's building. Okay. If this doesn't work this time, then I need to go back to Google again. Okay, cool. So there we go. So it says errors. So this is more about metal. Okay, so now that I have a clean console, now what we can do is we can go and we can what I'm going to do is I'm going to just comment out these lines. We're just going to have a look and see what values come in for this for this slider. So we can just do std cout raw gain and NL. Here we go. We're going to replace this. We're not going to play the track again. We're just going to see what values come in, see if those values look legit. Okay. So we're seeing that the values look fine. So now as I click, okay. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change it back to values between 0 and make sure that it's between minus 60 and 1. Just to make sure it should never, in this scenario, it should never actually increase the volume. Okay, actually before I go there, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the data class. And I'm going to so I'm just making sure that I haven't messed anything up. Okay, so I'm going to compile again. And oh, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to comment this line out now. So that will be so here's what I'm thinking before I do anything, which is that, okay, so apply gain should be happening on the audio thread to the buffer, right? So, but the new value, this is a little bit, I'm calling set decibel value directly from the slider. This, okay, so this is where I feel, no, that should be fine. Because the alternative is that I set up a listener class where the audio player data is listening to what's happening to the slider, but it's still setting the value. So that should be fine. Okay, so everybody, if you're listening on headphones or have your speakers turned up really loud, turn them down. We're going to try this again. We're going to try to play this audio again, and I don't want to play sound that's too loud in your speakers. So here we go. We're going to play. Okay. So that was interesting. That was interesting because it was playing fine, and then I touched the slider, and the second that I changed it, we lost all of our volume. So that is telling me that the that this is not getting called in the right place. So so now I've got an idea now, which is that what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our data class. I'm going to create a new value. I'm going to call it float gain in dB. I'm going to set it to 0.0. I'm going to not do this. And I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to call this, oh no, it should be, I'm going to call this raw gain. And then now I'm going to set that raw gain to this. And then so now I'm going to go to where process audio is, and I'm going to handle the volume changing in process audio. So we got audio source buffer. I'm going to, which is the buffer where the audio is getting the, where we've copied the audio from the when we load the file. So let's take a look at this again. So we load the file, we create a reader for the file. Then we read the file into the audio source buffer. So we're storing the entire song in this buffer. So now we want to change the volume, but only, so let's see here. Do we want to change it in the audio, the buffer that we've copied everything to, or do we want to change it once it's copied to once we've copied it to the main buffer? Let's just think about that for a second. So it's the audio source buffer. So I'm feeling like I want to do it in the main buffer because let me think. So the problem with doing it in the audio source buffer is that if I change the values in the audio source buffer and then for some reason I come back to the previous point where I changed the volume, then it'll change from what it originally was. So it's like I don't want to change the audio source buffer just in case I need to go back to a previous point. So I feel like it should be happening in the main buffer. So I'm going to do buffer apply gain, and this is going to happen to it's going to be by channel. So this will be CH since we're iterating through each channel. Start sample will be 0. Then this will be buffer get num samples, and the float gain will be raw gain. And then I'm going to go into apply gain into the function and just make sure, yes, so this is just multiplying the gain times the number of samples. So I think we should be fine here. Okay, so now let's try this again. Okay, it's just compiling. Okay, take your headphones off again. We're going to try this again. So once again, just take your headphones off, turn down your volume. We're going to play some audio, see what happens. Okay, I'm playing audio. Okay, so that worked now. There was only one problem, which is that the problem is that it didn't happen until nothing happened until I clicked on the slider. Okay, so is it because I didn't set an initial value in the UI class? So let's take a look at that. So once again, this is something that we will probably want to have as a parameter that we're able to that it just sets the value, set value. New value will be 0.0. And I'm going to set this to 0.0. Make sure these are all floats. We'll just make these floats. Okay, so let's just try that again. See what happens. Okay. Okay, just loaded the file. Now I'm going to take my headphones off. So everybody take your headphones off. same thing. Okay, so it doesn't register a value at first. Okay, so let's see here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through this process here. So I'm going to set a breakpoint. I'll load the file, play. So now we're stepping through. Now we're going to see what the value of all these things are. So if I actually go here into this, which is this object, I can see that raw gain has a value of 0. So why? So let's see. So we're going to step over, step over, step over. And so that so we can see that reposition. Okay, so okay. So the buffer size here is 512. If I hit play, I'm just going to get rid of this breakpoint. Okay, now I'm going to hit play again. So let's just look at where let's go back to the main component where I'm actually calling process audio. If the file is loaded and the audio player play state is playing, okay, so I'm going to go back here, set a breakpoint again. Okay, so we can see the reposition is still going. The raw gain, aha, oh, of course, raw gain is 0. Raw gain is, but so I'm doing the thing that I warned everybody about before, which is mixing up raw gain with with decibel full scale. So of course, if I set raw gain to 0.0, it's going to be zeroing out all of our values. We want this to be 1.0. And now we should be fine. Yeah, so I was setting it to 0.0 and it wasn't registering anything above 0 until I touched the slider, which changed it to a value above 0. So there you go. So here we go. I'm going to load the file, play it. So now we hear that this slider is working as designed. So that is all good. So that's working fine now. So we got raw gain. That is changing the volume of what's happening here. So I'm just just trying to think ahead here. Because if we have two audio players, then what's going to happen is that each one of those is going to have, so we've got a little bit of a problem here in that so there are a couple things that I'm thinking about. One is that maybe I need to do some writing. So I'm going to mirror my screen and go on my iPad so I can actually just write some notes here. So I'm going to share screen. I'm going to share my desktop one, which is this one. And now hopefully, so I'm going to go to MacBook Pro. Now hopefully you're able to see that. I'm actually going to look on my own live stream and make sure that you can actually see. I'm actually going to. Yep. Cool. I can see that you can see that now. Okay. So here we go. So we have an issue where, and excuse my writing in advance. So when we load a file, it takes, it creates a reader and it reads the file into an audio source buffer. What we're currently doing is when we want to when we want to play the audio file, what we're doing is we're taking and we're using a read pointer to read what's happening in, what do we have in, let's say our buffer size was 512, right? So the first time around, we're saying, okay, what is in the audio source buffer from values 0 to 512? We take that and we copy that to our main buffer. Currently, what we're doing is if we want to change the gain value of that audio player, we're doing this in main buffer by calling apply gain. In theory, that sounds fine, but now you run into a problem. So let's say that we have two of these, right? So if we're making a DJ app, we're going to have two or more of these audio file players, right? So what's going to happen is that, well, maybe this is okay. I'm just trying to think if this is okay or not. So we have this buffer and then it's applied. Yeah, it's not okay actually. So audio file player one, it does this process. And so now what you have is you have this buffer. You have this buffer that has audio player. I'll just call it player one. player one samples, right? The main buffer. Now what's going to happen is that you have this same process is going to happen for player two. The problem is that you have the audio source buffer that goes from, and then it's going to copy the sounds from, well, now I'm thinking about a couple problems. One problem is that it's going to copy the sounds over the first audio player sounds, right? So that's problem one. The player overwrites existing, so it overwrites whatever is in the buffer space. So it's actually going to erase. It's going to erase whatever was in the main buffer. That's a problem because we want those two things to mix, right? So that is problematic. Problem two. So let's assume that problem one wasn't a problem and that we're adding to the buffer rather than just overriding it. The problem is that if we apply gain to main buffer again, then what's going to happen is that the main buffer will then have the, sorry, I'm going to go to a new page. So problem two is that the main buffer, once you've processed once you've copied the information from audio player 2 into the main buffer, now what you've got is you've got player 2 audio data that's unadjusted, right? And you also have player 1 data which has been adjusted. So has been adjusted. Now, in our existing source, the way that our existing workflow is happening, when we do player 2, apply gain, what it's going to do is it's going to affect all of this data. I just want it to affect player 2 audio data, right? So that is because if I multiply it all by 0.5, then what's going to happen is it's going to multiply all the data that's in the main buffer by 0.5, and that is not what I want. I only want it to affect player 2 data. Okay, but going back to what I was saying before, we also have a different problem, which is that audio source buffer. So then we say, okay, well, why can't we just do that to the audio source buffer? Because what's going to happen is that we're going to, so let's say that we have the audio source buffer, and now we apply the gain to values 0 through 512. So that in theory feels fine. But what's going to happen is that so we're playing through our song, that's going fine. And then let's say that the DJ wants to take the track back. Let me draw this better. So this is the track. Let's say this waveform. We've taken the first 512 samples and we've applied a gain to it. So we've changed these values here at the beginning. Now when the DJ comes back to the beginning, those values and any other values in this song are going to be changed. And that's not what we want either. Okay? So that's a problem as well. So that seems to lead to a solution that, so it seems that the solution would be that you're going to have your audio source file. So this audio source file holds the audio, holds the audio track. So we should never try to modify this directly, because we may need to the DJ may want to come back and read from those files again. So now I'm thinking that maybe we have a temporary buffer, and then the temporary buffer, so we read from the audio source file to the temporary buffer. This temporary buffer can be really small. Like if the buffer size is 512, maybe we just make it 512 values, okay? And then so it could be the same size as the main buffer. And then here we can apply any sort of gains that we want. And then it goes to the main buffer. And then the temp buffer can just be cleared. And then, so the audio source file contains entire song. Temp buffer can just be the same size as the main buffer. So if the buffer size is 512, then that's how big that is. We apply the gain. We then do add to the main buffer. Sorry about my dog. And then clear. Toast, toast, toast. Okay, I've got a solution. All right, so that's that. So now we just need to put that into action. Look at my dog in the background on the lookout. So here we go. All right, so let's share our main screen now. Okay, so now we can go back to our code base here and just action this now. So where is Xcode? Okay, so here we go. So audio player data. So we have an audio source buffer. We're going to so now the question becomes, okay, do we just create, okay, so there are a couple things. We have a temp buffer. We could create that temp buffer in process. But there's a rule that you're not supposed to allocate or create objects on the audio thread. So because of that, I'm going to put that. I'm going to make it a member variable. I'm just going to call this temp buffer. I'm gonna also add a couple comments here. So holds entire track. That's our audio source buffer. Our temp buffer holds. I'll call this mutable temp data before being passed to main buffer. Okay, so now we go. So now what I'm thinking is that this audio player data could now have the question becomes, when does it actually create the amount of, so anytime the buffer sizes changes, prepare to play is going to get called. So now I'm thinking I could create a method now where we'll call this void audio player data. I'm going to call this prepare to play. Let me just pull. So prepare to play, and I'm going to go back to my main component, and this can just take in the same data that our main prepare to play takes in, because we're going to need a samples per a sample rate that we're going to need to use to do some adjustments for the sample rate that the song. So what if the sample rate of the song, what if that is different than the sample rate of the sound card that's playing? Now you need to do a conversion and think about how we're going to do that. So we're going to need sample rate a little bit later. But for now, what we could do is we can just create set size. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I want to set this to 2 for stereo, but I'm a little bit hesitant about just giving it what they call a magic number like that. I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to get how many channels the yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do get how many channels the main buffer has and pass that in there so we don't have any kind of magic numbers happening. So num channels, then we got samples per block. Now what I want to do is it's very easy to start calling methods on process audio and forget that you have this prepare to play method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a jassert temp buffer dot size is greater than 0. I'm just going to leave myself a note here, a comment that says you haven't called prepare to play. There we go. So that just makes sure that we use prepare to play anytime that we call this class. Temp. So we saw that we got a error here. Size is a private member of audio buffer float, so that's not going to, so we can't call size directly. What about get num samples? So there we go. So now we just need to change our workflow here. So now this will need to be temp buffer get num channels. So we want to make sure that our main buffer and our temp buffer actually I can just put this into one jassert. Like this. Okay, actually I'll put it under here because this is after my buffer variable. There we go. So now we want to do, this is going to be temp buffer, copy from the audio source buffer so we're copying from the audio source buffer to the temp buffer. Then we're going to call temp buffer apply gain. We want to make sure that the number of samples is also equal to of our temp buffer and our main buffer are the same size. Maybe I'll make these just so it's not a crazy long jassert get num channels equal to buffer Get up channels. So I'm just going to make this 3 separate asserts. It's no. I'm also going to reverse these. So as you can, this is just me being a stickler here, but here I have buffer equals temp buffer, and here I have temp buffer equals buffer. I want these to be, just for readability, I'm going to switch the order of these now, just to make sure everything is the same. Oh. So we got temp buffer, no, so what am I doing here? I'm going to do this. I'm going back on what I just said because both of this pertains to number of samples. Temp buffer get num samples is equal to buffer get num samples. Yep. So that seems better. And now we just need to make sure that we're copying from the right. So here we go. I'm just going to do temp buffer get num samples. And then same thing here. And then how do we actually, let's see, where do we actually mix this in? So I'm feeling like we could do this. I think it's fine to do this here. You know, now the question becomes, okay, should the audio player put this into, actually take the audio and put it into the main buffer, or should there be a separate place where this actually happens? You know, but then what you need to have is you're going to need to have, if you're going to do that, now you need to have a place where where the developer is going to be able to access the temporary buffer. So you're going to need to have a method there, and you're going to need to have an extra process that actually takes that buffer and copies it or adds it to the main buffer. I'm not going to worry. I feel like that's something I'm going to want to change later, but for now, I'm going to just handle that here. So we could just say buffer add from. So let's just take a look at so here we go. Destination channel will be CH. Destination start sample will be 0. The source will be temp buffer. The source channel will be CH. the source start sample will be 0. And the num samples will be buffer get num samples. Okay. Then, so now we just need to make sure that our temp buffer copy will be copy from channel 0 to so that it's coming from the audio source buffer and it's coming from the read position, and the amount that we're getting is temp buffer get num samples. So that looks fine. So I'm going to leave myself a comment here, which will be add samples to main buffer. Note, may want to change this later. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is also, as just a sanity check, I'm going to just make sure that I clear. So I'm going to do the same thing that they do in main component, which is clear active buffer region. Temp buffer, clear, active. Oh, interesting. So I think it's just temp buffer dot clear. Clears all the samples and all channels and marks the buffer as cleared. Just going to make sure that's indeed there's some confusion, just making sure that it doesn't actually deallocate the space. So I'm just going to see if this actually calls. Yes. So this calls clear under the hood. So that's fine. Just make sure there's no weird junk in the buffer beforehand. So here we go. So we clear the buffer. We ensure that the size of our temp buffer, number of channels, I'm just going to put, because I always think of things in terms of channels then samples, so I'm going to put samples under channels. Then temp buffer copy from, all of that looks good. Apply the gain to the temp buffer. You know, do I like temp buffer as a name? I'm going to just adjust this. I'm going to call this I'm just going to change some names here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this method as a public method in my audio player data class. There we go. Then I'm going to just take a critical look at the variable names that I have here. So audio source buffer. I'm feeling like that should be maybe a better name for that is song buffer, um, track buffer, and then temp buffer can be something like player buffer, or like active player buffer. I'll call it player. Yeah, holds mutable temp data where we can change gain, processing, etc. before being passed to the main buffer. Yeah, I think that works for me. Actually, I think audio source buffer sounds fine, actually. Yeah, then here we will take temp buffer and we will replace all of those with player buffer. Okay. And then I'm going to change buffer to fill just to main buffer. Oh, actually, I could just keep it buffer to fill and I'll change this to main buffer. And then main buffer. So I'm just doing that just to imply that that's our main buffer, of course. I think that just makes it a little bit easier to understand. Yeah. So here we go. So now what we need to do is make sure we call prepare to play in our main buffer. So we got main, oops. So we got audio, player data. I don't like this, but I'm going to just roll with this for now. So this will be buffer. So do we have a way that we can get how many channels we have currently happening? So we've got buffer to fill. Maybe like get num, get current. There must be something. Okay, let's go back to this JUCE audio component class and see output channels. So set audio channels. Let's see if that actually setup. So do I have access to setup, whatever setup is? So, okay, so device manager get audio setup. So setup dot output channels. So that's how we, oh yeah, we can get it from the device manager. So why is it doing this? So auto setup equals device manager get audio setup, audio device setup. Can I just chain this output channels? There we go. Just get it into one line. Output channels. Now just pass that in. Boom. So that's a big integer. That's not. Well, that. So output channels dot. Oh man. That's not what I want. So how do I check? How do I change this to? So let's see. let's think about this. The problem is that if we have an external mixer connected, then it's not the number of output channels is not may not be 2, could be 4. So I don't want it. So I'm just trying to think, is there going to be a situation in this DJ app where it's not going to be a stereo output? I can't think of anything at the moment. Yeah. Because then when you have audio, when you have a second channel, now you have to know which channels it's going to route data into. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this at 2 for now. I'll say, assuming this is a stereo setup each track. Samples per block expected. Sample rate. So I'm curious to see in prepare to play where it's getting. So let's see. Where is it getting this? Yeah. So. Yeah, this seems fine. So let's see, where is yeah, so that's fine. Okay. So now let's see if this actually works the way that we want it to. So here we go. Okay, just compiling. Okay, hit load, hit play. Boom. Works fine. Awesome. So now we're seeing that that this is yeah, this is looking pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is the last. So let's see what do we want to do here? We could make this where this loads a file of your choice rather than just loading. I feel like that since I'm uploading this to an open source repo, that feels like the right move to make. So um, let's go to the file chooser class. Yeah, rather than just having some sort of static song that you're assuming is on the desktop. That's a little bit crap. Okay, so let's see here. So we got creates a dialog box to choose a file or directory to load or save. So dialog box title, and then all of the other things are just optional arguments. Okay. Then let's see. Creates a file chooser. Then we got browse for files to open. Okay, so that seems pretty straightforward. So let's just comment this out for a moment. This is kind of not right anyway, so I'm glad I'm doing this. So we could say JUCE file chooser. We will call this song selector. And then we will initialize that with just a string dialog box title. So select a song to play. Then song selector, what was that method called? Browse for file to open. So how do we get a file out of that? Shows a dialog box. Okay, so it seems like it will be something like if song selector browse. Why does that not work properly? What is going on here? Okay, let me make sure I got this right. So this is the file chooser. Browse for file to open. So why is that not showing up in autocomplete? So let's just try this again. If song selector browse for file to open, Um, so browse for file to open returns a boolean. So that boolean returns if we've successfully opened that browser. Then we will then we want to get the result, all right? So I'm just going to recreate this music file. We could say music file equals song selector get result. Okay, no member named, browse for file to open in file chooser. Browse for file to open. Why does that not work? Just going to try to compile this, see if it works or browse for file to open. So it's file chooser, song selector. Why is it not working? That is so strange. Aha, got it. If modal loops permitted. That's what the problem is. So that's the problem. Is that maybe I don't have modal loops. Maybe I don't have modal loops permitted. Let me see. So all of these, none of these are available to me unless I enable modal loops. So modal loop just okay, look at this. Here's some guidance actually. So they've made it a unique pointer. Okay. Cool. I like this. Let's just do what it tells you to do. Okay. So back to data. So this should be a stood unique pointer. here. Then you just allocate it. Song selector equals stood. Make unique. JUCE file chooser. And then we will just put this here. And then, I keep doing that. Okay, so here we've got some flags that we can choose. Okay, so this is cool. This is a good learning experience. Auto song selector flags equals, and then file browser component. So it opens a file browser component. So now we just need to look at that. File browser component. So we got can select files. What else? Okay. So this is open mode. JUCE file browser component. Open mode. Then it's this one to select more than one. File browser component, and we want it to open files. Can open, can select files. Okay. Then we use what? Launch async. Okay. So song selector, launch async with song selector, not flags. And then giving it access to this. Pass in a file chooser. What is it? Const file JUCE file chooser. And then music file equals song selector, what get result. I'll choose a get result. Chooser What am I doing? Is that right? Just making sure I got this right. We want, maybe we do file, get special location, expected body of lambda expression. Okay. What did I do wrong here? Oh, it's like this. Not confusing at all. Okay. Cannot be implicitly captured with a lambda with a no capture defaults specified. Is that right? There we go. That's fine. Should I just put all of this inside there? Create reader for music file. So I could actually do just this, which means now I can move this in this. So now I could just make this auto. And this can just return false otherwise. Okay. So now we can just so what do we got here? Initial file or directory. So we can go back here, open this. So we'll start maybe in the desktop. So we could do JUCE file special location type is their desktop user desktop directory. JUCE file special, what was it called? Special location type. File special location type. User desktop directory. And then we can do a string of file patterns around allowed. So if I go back to audio format manager, well, let me do a JUCE, a string array. So let me see if that will work. So JUCE, let's go back to this. Let's go back to audio format manager. Okay, cool. Get returns a set of wildcards for matching. So get wildcard for all formats. So that would be audio format manager get wildcard for all formats. So I feel like I'm learning something cool here. So now let's see if this works. Build failed. No matching constructor for file chooser. Okay, so let's see here. Let's just compare that against what we have for our oh, file get special location. So it needs to be something like this. JUCE file get special location. Okay. That should work now. It's weird. Sometimes I look at the code that ends up coming out and I'm like, I can't believe that I actually wrote that. Okay, so now when I hit load, should open up a file chooser. Oh, where is it? Uh-oh. I'm not seeing anything. Have I done something wrong? What's happened here? Let's try to recompile again and just see what happens when. I know what's happened. I launch it async and then it's like trying to load this. I need to pull all of this back out. So it launches async and then it tries to execute all of these instructions, and I don't want it to do that. So I want it to wait, which means I need to now pull this back out again. JUCE file, music file. And then that is no longer like that. Now we should be okay. Yeah, so you gotta select it. You gotta select the file before it actually loads it. Uh-oh. Okay, so I see what the problem is here. Just need to the problem is that this is not a modal loop anymore. So it does all this. But then executes everything else. So it doesn't just stop at this and wait for us to make a selection. So it's almost like this needs to be in a different function. So this should maybe return. So what can we call this? Select a song. Then there's one that's called select a song, maybe one that's called load file. So load file, load song. So it needs to wait before it creates a so it's like this needs to be here. Then we got this will return a bool audio player data. Let's just call this load song for a moment. And then this is going to take a JUCE file. We'll call this music. We can just call this music file. Then in here, maybe this is find file. Then this will be this will return a what am I doing here? JUCE file. Can I just do this like this? Will it work? Or will it complain that it doesn't have a default? All right, let's just correct this. So we got load or find file. And then we got, that should return a JUCE file. And we got full load song. This takes a JUCE file. Should be a reference. And we will call this music file. So we got load song. Okay. Num-void function. Could this be, can I just do return JUCE file? Like that. So then we need to make sure the song exists. So it will be jassert music file say do file, no file loaded. Or should I say no valid file loaded? So that returns a bool. No, I got that. I got that. Bool load song juice. Oh, because this needs to take a reference. It still doesn't really solve my problem though. So the problem is that in the UI, we've got this find file. Now becomes the question of how do you make it hold on until it selects a file. So I feel like I'm going to go to the forum to see if we can find something. So let's say file chooser launch async. Let's see here. And why are modal loops bad? That's one thing that I don't. Because now I need to, the problem here is that now I need to add some type of wait mechanism. So it's waiting until the file has returned. I need to wait until it's returned before I can. I did that before. Let me see if. So let's see here. So isn't there like a standard wait? Let's just say C++ wait for file to return. Wait for result. Wait for return from function. Waits for the shared state to be ready. Function blocks the calling thread and waits until it's so it blocks. But I think that's okay though, right? So let me think. The problem is if the audio player is already playing audio, I can't do this because then it will stop the audio. So let's see, how can you get around that? Or doesn't need to block, I think. So it's blocking on this thread that's not the audio thread. So is that a problem? So let's go back. Suppose one. So what? So it's C++. Wait for return from function. Let's try this and just see if this works. So button is clicked. Future. So then you need to call future. Wait for this thing to call. Got launch async. Okay. Let's see if we can. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. Let me just try it in here. Maybe I can make this back into one function again. So if we do stood future, then we will call this JUCE file. Equals find file. Do I need to give this a... Okay. So music file. Okay, this needs to be a reference. Okay. Aha. Okay, we're getting there. Then we need to check if future. So, okay, we're getting there. So something like so now this needs to be stood future. This needs to be stood future. And it needs to be a reference. So this means that this would probably be back to this. up here. Okay. Okay, so let's go back here. This is not what I want. Let's go back to okay. So they called stood async. Ah, okay, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Then find file. And there's nothing there, right? Then we call wait. So what if it has no arguments? Do I just kind of just do that? Ah, I know. Don't call, you don't have the braces. Get in there. Okay, it's just a, okay, change this back from this. So the file's just going to be a string. That's not a big deal. So then this goes like this. Okay. So find file. Okay. You are not going to defeat me. Let's see here. So we need stood async now. Async. Okay. Show me a simple example. Man, why do they give these complicated examples? Stood future. Geeks. Let's go through here. Okay. Oh, I was just hoping for a really simple solution here. Why is this being such a pain? Okay. The launch async. So why doesn't that work? Okay. Okay. Here we go. So what is this in? So that's like a default. So that's the okay, so that's the input is prime. So that's the argument, but what if it has no arguments? That's what I don't get. See, every one of these has some type of input, but what if it doesn't have an input? That's what I don't understand. Let's go back. It's a find file, no matching function. Did you mean to call it? Okay. Ah, I could have swore that I did that. No matching call. So do I just do this? Just leads me in circles. Stud launch async. It's just it doesn't give me any like real example that I can just look at. Oh. Runs it asynchronously in a new thread. That's what I want. Launch async. launch async. What in the world? Okay. Is that right? So still launch async, find file. Man. Okay, I can't. Okay. Why not call load song from the file chooser lambda? So the problem is that I'm trying to launch a file chooser, and I'm trying to do it without enabling modal loops. So I had a problem, which is that if I put all of this in here, that it executes it all as one. It executes it all at one time. What I need to happen is for it to wait until I get the result. That's what the problem is right now. So I don't understand like why. Maybe I just need to enable modal loops. Just make it simple. So what I would like is this. For this to just return a Boolean. Then, yeah. Yeah, so this is the problem. I load this. this again. Yeah, so I hit load. So what you're going to see is that when I do this, it's going to give me an error. And it doesn't load my it doesn't give me a loading dialog, because what's happening is that it's just executing all of this. What happens is that this should not happen until I have until music file has been chosen. That's the problem. You know, so now, so that goes back to what I was saying before. Yeah, I'm just going to make it simple for now and just do JUCE enable modal loops. Here. So to disable so okay, so what I could do is I could just change this preprocessor definitions field. But that code doesn't run until you choose a file. See, if I do this, it doesn't solve my problem. See, it runs. That's weird. Okay, so let me just. All right, let me just try this. Okay. See, when I click the load, when I click it, it doesn't work right. I mean, it doesn't launch the dialog window. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this simple. And where's my preprocessor definitions? Is that here? You have to declare the file chooser as a member, not as a local. Okay. right, well, let's try that. File chooser is being destroyed. Ah, yes. Okay, that makes sense now. Marvin says the file chooser is being destroyed at the end of the function. Yes, so it closes. That makes sense now. Okay, here we go, building. It's one other thing is that it calls load file right at the beginning. So let's see. So load. So okay. So we call it. We're calling that. Okay. Now I need to set up a timer. Okay, I can just do this. All the reader load song stuff goes in. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay. Now we're getting there. Non-void lambda does not return a value. Ah, here we go. All right, here we go. Okay, load. Ah, here we go. Song is there. Uh-oh, what did I do? So it's bad access. Okay, so this needs to go in here. Yep, so here we go. We will get there. Okay, this should work. Okay, no crazy memory allocation stuff. And play. Okay, woo, we got it working. So Marvin, as usual, comes to save the day. So I just need to move song selector because what was happening is it was running the entire. It was running the entire function and destroying the file chooser at the end. Thank you, Marvin. You are the best. I'm going to watch some football now, but I will first commit all of this so you can have some fun along with this. So if we do CD development juice DJ, what did I call that? 1 second. So if I go into development, juice, audio programmer, and then I called it JUCE DJ app. JUCE DJ app. Git add, git commit. What did we do? Created gain slider and extended file chooser. Git push u origin main. Did I not do that right? What did I not do? Yeah. Configured based on your username and host name. Please check. Why is that not working? Unknown switch. Unknown switch. Error. Unknown switch -m. What is that? Oh. Git push origin main. There we go. Ooh, we got there. I'm fried. My brain is fried. Okay, cool. Thank you for joining in. That was a lot of fun. I hope that was educational for you. Yeah, let's do this again soon. I will see you sometime this week. Thank you again, and see you later.